3 years had passed since Amarachi walked away from the old compound that once held her tears. Life had changed completely. She now lived in Enugu, in a modest but beautiful apartment, surrounded by books, framed certificates, and memories of hard work. She had finished secondary school with excellent results and had just gained admission to study business administration at the university. The company that once managed her late father's trust fund had helped her open the Necker Home of Hope, a foundation that provided education and food for orphan children. Every weekend, she visited the home to spend time with the kids, reading stories and sharing laughter that came straight from her heart. The villagers who once mocked her now spoke her name with pride. Her story had become something mothers told their daughters, how the girl who once fetched water barefoot now drove her own small car and helped others rise. But success has its own kind of danger, not the type that comes with poverty, but the one that hides in admiration, envy, and deceit. One Saturday morning, Amarachi arrived at the foundation to meet a young man waiting at the gate. He was tall, with a calm face and a smile that looked sincere. "Good morning, Miss Amarachi," he greeted. "My name is Emeka. I heard about your foundation. I'd love to volunteer." She looked at him carefully. "That's kind of you," she said warmly. "Come in." From that day, Emeka became part of the foundation's team. He helped repair broken chairs, organized supplies, and even taught the children football on weekends. His kindness seemed genuine, and soon, Amarachi began to trust him. But while she saw a helper, others saw something else. The workers at the foundation started whispering. "Maybe she's falling for him," one said. "That boy is always around her." Weeks passed, and Emeka grew closer. He began asking questions about the trust fund, about the company that managed it, about her father's land. Amarachi didn't think much of it at first. She thought he was just curious. But soon, he started showing too much interest. One evening, after they had finished distributing food at the orphanage, Emeka said, "You've done so much good, Amarachi. But why let those people manage your father's money? You're old enough to handle it yourself now. You could make it bigger." She smiled faintly. "The company has been fair. They protect it until I turn 18. That's the agreement." Emeka nodded slowly. "Still, people can be greedy. You should have control." Something about his tone made her uneasy. That night, she lay awake thinking. The memory of her aunt's deceit flashed in her mind, the fake papers, the lies, the police. She took a deep breath. "Not again," she whispered to herself. The next day, she visited the company office to review her records. The man who had first helped her, Mr. Okoro, welcomed her warmly. "You've grown, Amarachi," he said with a proud smile. "You remind me that goodness can survive hardship." "Thank you, sir," she said softly. "I just wanted to make sure everything is still safe." He nodded. "Everything is fine. But be careful who you trust. I've seen people lose everything because they believed the wrong smile." His words stayed in her mind. Back at the foundation, Emeka continued his charm. He brought gifts for the children and even started visiting Amarachi's apartment under the excuse of helping her with reports. At first, it felt harmless. He made her laugh, told stories about his childhood, and seemed to understand her pain. Slowly, she began to feel comfortable around him, until one evening, he asked something that changed everything. "Can you show me the document that proves the money is in your name?" She froze. "Why do you want to see that?" He shrugged casually. "Just curious. I want to understand how it all works. Maybe I can help you invest it." Amarachi smiled politely but felt a chill deep in her chest. "That won't be necessary," she said quietly. "Everything is already managed properly." From that day, she started observing him carefully. His phone calls became secretive, his eyes restless. One night, when he left his bag at the office by mistake, she found inside a small notebook with scribbled notes, her full name, the trust company's details, and even her foundation's bank account number. Her heart dropped. She couldn't believe it. The next morning, She confronted him at the foundation. "Emeka," she said firmly, holding the notebook. "What is this?" He blinked in shock, then tried to smile. "You're misunderstanding things. I was just keeping track of your work." "Don't lie to me," she said sharply. "You've been trying to find a way into my accounts. Who sent you?" He hesitated, then sighed. "You wouldn't understand. People want to help you manage your money better. I was just the link." "People like who?" He looked away. "Your aunt." The ground seemed to tilt beneath her. "Auntie Nneka," she whispered. "Yes," he muttered. "She found me through someone in the village. She said you wouldn't listen to her, so she wanted me to help her fix things between you, and maybe get back some of what she lost." Amarachi's voice trembled. "So you pretended to care." "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he said quickly. "She said you'd be fine. She said you had more than enough." Her eyes burned with fury and hurt. "Get out," she said quietly. He tried to explain, but she raised her hand. "Leave now before I call the police." That night, Amarachi sat alone, staring at the city lights through her window. The tears came quietly this time, not from weakness but from exhaustion. How could her own aunt still try to destroy her, even after all that had happened? She thought about the children at her foundation, the ones who looked at her with hope, and she knew she couldn't let bitterness win. The next morning, she gathered her staff and told them everything. "From today," she said, her voice steady, "no one joins this foundation without full background checks. We protect this home with everything we have." Weeks later, she received news that Aunt Nneka had fallen ill. No one in the village cared to visit her. Her children had moved away, ashamed of what she'd done. For a long time, Amarachi couldn't decide whether to see her or not. But one evening, as rain began to fall, she made up her mind. When she entered the small room where Nneka lay, the older woman could hardly speak. Her eyes filled with tears the moment she saw Amarachi. "You still came," she whispered. Amarachi nodded, sitting beside her. "You're still my aunt," she said softly. Nneka's hand trembled as she reached out. "I lost everything trying to take what was never mine," she said. "You showed me mercy once. I didn't deserve it. I just wanted you to forgive me before I die." Amarachi held her hand. "I already did." For the first time, Nneka smiled sincerely. "You became everything I wanted to be but couldn't." After she passed away a few weeks later, Amarachi made sure she had a proper burial. The entire village came out to watch. Many whispered that Amarachi had a heart made of gold. Standing beside the grave, she whispered, "Rest, Auntie. The pain ends here." From that day, Amarachi promised herself one thing: never to let pain make her cruel and never to let success blind her. She returned to her foundation stronger than ever, her spirit firm but gentle. She built new branches in other towns, touching hundreds of lives. Each time she looked at the smiling faces of the children, she saw her younger self, the girl who once scrubbed floors, now teaching others to dream again. And whenever anyone asked her how she stayed so grounded, she would smile and say, "Because I've seen both sides of life. I know what it means to be broken, and I know what it means to rise." The lesson is simple: never forget who you were before the light found you. The story of Amarachi continued to unfold like the slow rise of dawn after a long night. Life had given her peace, but peace doesn't always mean the end of storms. Sometimes, it just means learning how to stand tall when the next one comes. Months after Aunt Nneka's burial, Amarachi found herself at the center of attention once again, not for tragedy this time, but for the power of her kindness. The Nneka Home of Hope had expanded into 3 towns, and the state government had recognized her work publicly. The media began calling her the girl who rose from dust. But fame has its own shadows. The more her name spread, the more eyes turned toward her, some admiring, others calculating. People began to appear, each claiming to know her late parents, each with stories that didn't add up. Amarachi had learned enough to be cautious, yet her heart, no matter how guarded, still leaned toward compassion. One afternoon, while overseeing a feeding program in Sucker, she noticed a woman sitting quietly at the edge of the compound. The woman's clothes were clean but old, and her face carried a sadness Amarachi recognized too well. "Good afternoon, Ma," Amarachi greeted. "Are you one of the parents?" The woman shook her head. "No, my daughter," she said in a faint voice. "I came to speak with you." They moved to a shaded corner under a mango tree. The woman's eyes glistened as she began, "My name is Ngozi. Your mother was my best friend in school. I heard about all you've done, and I couldn't believe you were the same little girl I used to carry on my back." Amarachi frowned slightly. "You knew my mother?" "Yes, my dear. I even helped her when she was expecting you," Ngozi said, voice trembling. "Before she passed, she gave me something to keep safe, something for you. But I couldn't find you all these years." She reached into her bag and brought out a small brown envelope, worn with age. Amarachi hesitated, then took it carefully. Inside was a folded letter and a pendant, the same kind of pendant her mother used to wear around her neck, shaped like a heart with a single word carved on it, Chimdindu, God still lives. Her eyes filled with tears. The handwriting on the letter was unmistakable, her mother's. "My sweet Amarachi," the letter began. "If you ever see this, it means life has kept you long enough to understand pain and love. Remember this always. The light inside you is stronger than any darkness that surrounds you. No matter who tries to break you, forgive them, but never forget the lesson they bring. When the time comes, return home and rebuild what was taken. The land behind your father's old house belongs to you. Protect it. It will open doors you never imagined." Amarachi's hands trembled. That land. She remembered it. It was the same plot Aunt Neka had tried to sell years ago, claiming it was hers. Amarachi had never gone back since the day she left. She looked up at Ngozi. "Thank you, Ma. You don't know what this means to me." Ngozi smiled weakly. "I'm just glad I could finally give it to you. Your mother was a rare woman. She'd be proud of who you've become." That night, Amarachi couldn't sleep. The letter replayed in her mind like a whisper. Return home and rebuild what was taken. By dawn, her decision was made. She would return to Umuoma. When she arrived, the village was different. New houses, painted walls, and a tarred road where dusty paths once ran. But the air still carried the same smell of roasted maize and palm oil. As she drove past the square, people began to whisper, "Is that not Amarachi? The girl who became rich?" She came back. When she reached the old compound, memories rushed over her. The gate was rusty, the walls cracked. The small hut where she once cried herself to sleep stood abandoned. She took a deep breath and walked around to the back, to the land her mother had mentioned. The space was covered in wild grass, but beneath it, she could almost feel the presence of her roots, her bloodline. "Here," she murmured, "this is where it all begins again." Within weeks, she started clearing the land, hiring workers from the village. Her plan was simple but powerful, to build a new branch of the Neka home of Hope right where her pain had begun. But not everyone in Umuoma was happy about it. Among them was a man named Obadike, the village secretary. He was Neka's cousin, a man known for greed disguised as wisdom. He called a meeting with some elders. "That girl is bringing trouble," he said bitterly. "She thinks she can come and claim everything because she now has money. That land belongs to this family." "But didn't her father own it?" one elder asked. Obadike waved his hand. "Documents can be forged. We'll make sure the council reclaims it." A week later, Amarachi received a letter from the village council demanding that she stop construction until ownership was verified. She felt her chest tighten. It was happening again. The same game of deceit, the same hunger for what wasn't theirs. But this time, she wasn't a helpless girl. She gathered every document, the court papers from years ago, the trust deed, and now, her mother's letter, and went straight to the council hall. The place was filled with murmuring villagers. Obadiah stood with a smirk. "We just want to ensure fairness," he said. Amarachi looked straight at him. "Fairness?" she asked calmly. "Or fear that your lies will die with the truth?" The room went silent. She handed the papers to the chairman. "These are legal documents, signed and stamped. This land was my father's inheritance, passed to my mother, and then to me. Even my late aunt knew it. She tried to sell it once. Remember what happened? The police didn't forget." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Obadiah began to stammer, but the chairman raised his hand. "Enough. The documents are clear. Amarachi, this land is yours. You may continue your work." Tears filled her eyes as she bowed slightly. "Thank you, sir." When she stepped outside, the villagers clapped. Some came forward to shake her hand, others to bless her. It was as if the old wounds had finally healed. Construction resumed immediately, and soon, the building began to rise. Bright walls, wide windows, laughter echoing as workers sang Igbo folk songs while they worked. Amarachi would visit daily, wearing simple clothes, blending with the workers, offering them food and encouragement. One afternoon, as she stood watching the roof being fixed, a man approached her quietly. It was Emeka. For a moment, she froze. He looked thinner, his eyes heavy with guilt. "Amarachi, I didn't come to cause trouble," he said quickly. "I came to apologize." She said nothing. "I lost everything," he continued. "After you told me to leave, I tried to work elsewhere, but your story followed me. People called me a thief. I just wanted a chance to say I'm sorry. I didn't know how deep her lies went." Amarachi's face softened slightly. "What made you come here?" He looked around the land and sighed. "I heard you were building this home. I wanted to help, even if it's just carrying blocks. Let me do something good, even if I don't get paid." She studied him for a while, then said quietly, "Redemption is not begged for, it's proven." He nodded humbly. "Then let me prove it." For the next few weeks, Emeka worked like a man seeking forgiveness, carrying cement, fetching water, doing whatever he was told. Slowly, the other workers stopped judging him. Even Amarachi began to see sincerity in his actions. When the building was finally completed, she stood in front of it during the opening ceremony, the signboard proudly reading, "Neka Home of Hope, Umuoma Branch." The crowd cheered. Children danced. The village drummers played joyfully. Amarachi raised her hand and spoke, her voice steady and warm. "This land once held my pain," she said, "but now it holds healing. My mother's dream lives here. May no child in this village ever feel forgotten again." The crowd erupted in applause. Later that evening, as the sun melted into gold behind the hills, Emeka approached her once more. "Thank you for letting me stay," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Maybe we both needed this, to rebuild something broken inside us." He nodded. "I'll never forget this chance." She turned to look at the new building, her heart full. The laughter of children floated through the air, mixing with the gentle hum of the evening breeze. For the first time in years, Amarachi felt completely at peace. Little did she know, peace was only the beginning of another chapter waiting just beyond the horizon. Life moved beautifully for Amarachi after the grand opening of the Neka Home of Hope, Umuoma Branch. The center became a symbol of change, not just for orphans but for the entire community. People came from nearby villages to witness the transformation, to see how a girl once despised had become a beacon of light. Children called her Auntie Amora, and the villagers began to say, "When the gods bless someone, even the wind bows." She had built something meaningful, yet beneath all the joy, a strange emptiness followed her quietly, something she couldn't name. Maybe it was the silence after years of chaos, or maybe it was the loneliness that success often brings when everyone around you starts seeing your achievements instead of your heart. Emeka had proven himself. He worked faithfully, never complained, never begged for more than what was given. Sometimes Amarachi would catch him staring at the children as they played, his expression filled with regret and longing, perhaps wishing he could go back and undo all the foolish things he once did. One evening, as Amarachi walked through the compound, she saw Emeka sitting alone under the mango tree, watching the sunset. "You've been quiet lately," she said softly, sitting beside him. He smiled faintly. "Quiet is better than noise that causes pain." She studied his face for a moment, then asked, "Are you happy here?" He nodded slowly. "More than I deserve." She wanted to say more, but she stopped herself. Forgiveness was easier said than lived. It was not hatred that held her back, it was the memory of everything she went through, the betrayal, the loneliness, the nights she cried herself to sleep. As days turned into months, the home grew stronger. Donations began to pour in. Amarachi opened small skill centers for widows and young mothers. She traveled often between Saka and Umuoma, giving speeches about resilience and purpose. Yet, behind the growing fame, something darker began to stir again, not from outside this time, but within. It started with the finances. One morning, her accountant, Kyoma, knocked on her office door. "Madam, there's something strange in the books," she said. Amarachi looked up from her laptop. "What is it?" Kyoma handed her a file. Over the past 3 months, several large withdrawals were made from the foundation's account, cash transactions, all signed with your name. Amarachi frowned deeply. "My name?" "Yes. And they carry your signature." She flipped through the pages, her chest tightening. The signatures looked exactly like hers. Each transaction was large, too large to be missed, and all marked as supplies or transport. "Who else has access to these records?" she asked. "Only me, you, and Emeka, since you made him the operations manager last month." The name froze in her throat. "Emeka?" Kyoma nodded. "Yes. He sometimes collects invoices and signs receipts on your behalf, but I never saw him handle cash." Amarachi leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Could it be possible that after everything, after all the chances, history was repeating itself? "I'll look into it myself," she said quietly. That night, she couldn't sleep. The thought of being betrayed again by someone she had begun to trust felt unbearable. She wanted to believe in Emeka's change, but something in her spirit told her not to ignore the signs. The next morning, she called for him. "Emeka," she said as he walked in, "we need to talk." He looked uneasy. "About what?" "About money being withdrawn from the foundation account, money carrying my signature." His eyes widened. "What? That's not possible." She held his gaze. "Are you sure? Because the records say otherwise." "I swear, Amarachi, I didn't take anything. You can check my room, my bag, everything I have. I've been working honestly." She studied his face closely. His voice trembled, but his eyes, they didn't carry guilt. They carried fear. "Then who could have done it?" she asked. He took a deep breath. "Madam, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. It's about Kyoma." Her eyebrows lifted. "What about her?" "She's been spending too much money lately. New clothes, new phone, even a car she said her cousin bought for her. But I've overheard her talking to someone on the phone about getting what's hers before you find out. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure." Amarachi's heart pounded. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I didn't want it to look like I was blaming someone else to cover my own mistakes." She thought for a moment. "We'll find out the truth." The following day, Amarachi quietly contacted the bank and requested surveillance footage of the withdrawals. The manager, who respected her deeply, agreed to help. 2 days later, she sat in her office watching the screen. Her breath caught when the video began, a woman wearing sunglasses, walking confidently to the counter. When the teller asked for identification, she produced Amarachi's ID card and signed the papers. The camera zoomed in on her face, and there it was, Kyoma. Amarachi's hands shook. She paused the video, leaning back slowly. A wave of disappointment washed over her. The pain wasn't just from the theft, it was from the betrayal. Kyoma had been with her since the first branch of the foundation. She had trusted her with everything. She picked up her phone and called Emeka. "Meet me in the office in 10 minutes, she said quietly. When he arrived, she turned the laptop toward him. "Watch." He leaned closer, and his jaw dropped. "Kyoma." "Yes," Amarachi said softly. "Kyoma." "What do we do now?" he asked. "We let her walk into her own trap," Amarachi replied. Later that afternoon, Amarachi called Kyoma to her office. "We'll be conducting a full audit next week," she said casually. "I want you to prepare all records and receipts." Kyoma smiled nervously. "Of course, madam." As she turned to leave, Amarachi added calmly, "Oh, and Kyoma, the bank called me. They said someone's been impersonating me for cash withdrawals. Imagine that, eh?" Kyoma froze for a split second, then forced a laugh. "Ah, people are wicked these days." Amarachi watched her carefully. "Indeed, they are." 2 days later, Kyoma didn't come to work. Her phone was off. The following morning, Amarachi went straight to the police with the evidence. Within a week, Kyoma was arrested in Enugu while trying to leave the state. When the news broke, Amarachi felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Another betrayal, yes, but this time she wasn't the one destroyed by it. She was the one standing firm. That evening, Emeka came to see her. "You handled it well," he said softly. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone so calm under fire." She gave a small smile. "Pain has a way of teaching calmness. I've seen worse." He nodded. "You're strong, Amarachi." She looked at him for a long moment before saying, "No, I'm just done being broken." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the faint laughter of children playing in the distance. The center glowed with soft lights, the sound of joy echoing across the compound. As night fell, Amarachi walked to the balcony, staring at the stars. Her mother's pendant hung around her neck, Chimdindu. She touched it gently and whispered, "Mama, I'm learning. The tables didn't just turn once, they keep turning, and I'm still standing." Behind her, Emeka stepped onto the balcony. "You ever wonder what your life would have been if your aunt never mistreated you?" She turned and smiled faintly. "I wouldn't be who I am today. Sometimes pain is just the universe sharpening you for purpose." He nodded slowly. "Then you're sharp enough to cut through anything now." She laughed quietly. "Maybe. But I'll never forget, the same tables that turn for good can turn again if we forget humility." He smiled. "Then let's keep them balanced." And for the first time in a very long time, Amarachi allowed herself to rest. The night was peaceful, not because her battles were over, but because she had finally learned to rise without fear. Her story was far from finished. New faces would soon appear. New storms would test her strength. But one thing was certain. Amarachi was no longer the girl who waited for tables to turn. She had become the one who set them right.